Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of Scientology Chat. It's just me today, and I know our schedule is a little unusual while I create this. I was debating on if I wanted to make this episode, but I got more than one email. I got more than 5 emails, actually. After the episode We Got Our E-Meter came out, where some folks were disappointed that I didn't explain how to actually use the e-meter. So, originally I was not going to do that because learning to use an e-meter takes forever. There's multiple books on it. There's many, many different ways to interpret the needle and to learn how to operate it and all of those different things. There's all the different drills, warm-ups, exercises, etc. But after some consideration, I decided that I would at least do some of it. Maybe I'll go through the whole deal and kind of go through everything. But at least to get started, in this episode, I'm going to tell you how to set up the e-meter, how to actually put it together, turn it on, calibrate it, etc. So, before we get started, there's some things you have to know if you haven't seen some of the other episodes or aren't familiar with the e-meters. There's multiple different versions of them, iterations, generations of them over time that have been released. And the version that we will be using, or that I will be using and going through the instructions for you, is a Mark 7 e-meter. The current version is the 8, and there's a lot of the steps in the process that we're going to be doing that you don't have to do on the current versions of the e-meter. I've seen things before, people in, Reddit groups or people who don't like Scientology and have this common theme that similar to the materials that the church releases these new versions of e-meters, not because they are any improvements or that they're really different, but just to get people who have bought one before to buy one again. And at least in the case of the 7 to the 8, there are some massive improvements to shorten and simplify the setup process that we're going to be doing today. There's a lot of these things, like I said, that you don't have to do anymore. It's way easier. So, we will get started. I have my e-meter here next to me. If the audio quality gets a little odd as we go through this, it's because of the way that my recording section area is set up here. And we're pretty much just going to go through the whole process. So, and if you haven't seen other episodes, keep in mind, I was originally doing my meter training on the current version. So even with this process, there are pieces of this that I had to retrain myself and reset up my entire process when I set this up to play with it or do solo auditing or kind of just experiment and practice with it. I can't tell you enough. If you can get a Mark 7 e-meter, they're not that expensive to get ones on the internet. Just be mindful if you get one, the first thing to do, like with all older electronics, is when you get it, open it up and look at the internal battery. The Mark 7's, several iterations of the e-meter can be charged and operated without being plugged in. Mine is one of them. If you heard me talk about this in previous episodes, you'll know that the e-meter that I was sent was completely brand new. Everything was still in its original wrapper. I have every piece of the original equipment. So as we go through this process, if you get one or you have one and you're missing things like the resistor calibration card, that's something that you're going to want to either watch a guide for online or try to find a replacement. Um, because this is an example of something that is not used with the current version. It's not manufactured anymore. So you can still get things like replacement cans or different pieces like that for an e-meter, and it's very easy. But things like the resistor calibration card are not going to be so simple. Um, there's also something where I honestly am not sure why it says this in the user manual. It also says this in the current version manual too. Um, like the instructions tell you many times to make sure that you set the clock every time you turn on the meter. Um, I have no idea why, other than to be able to keep track of your session time, which that part makes sense to me, but even when you're testing it or playing around with it, it still tells you, like, as if not setting the clock is going to be absolutely devastating to being able to operate the meter. Um, I'm going to move my microphone a little bit over here so I can kind of make it a bit easier. I have a horrible habit when we record these podcasts where I have to constantly keep looking back at the recording software to look at the audio levels, even though it doesn't matter. And I do do stuff to normalize and limit the loudness and remove background noise anyway. I still have a horrible habit of constantly looking over at it. Um, okay, so I already have my meter set up, plugged in. Everything's all plugged in together here. So before you even like the power cord is plugged in, I mean, and you'll see why I say that. So before we even get started, the first thing you'll want to do is have your meter sitting here, and you're just going to have it be by itself. You're not going to plug in the cans, you're not going to adjust any of the knobs or anything yet. You just want to have it here in front of you and plugged in. There's two main knobs on the top left section of the meter, and then three knobs on the bottom. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the smaller knob. If you're familiar with a meter, it's called, you already know what I mean when I say this, but if you're not, there is the sensitivity knob. And if you're just looking at a photo of an e-meter, it's the one that goes from 1 to 32. So you're going to take that knob and you're going to turn it all the way to 32. Okay? So once we turn it to 32, you're going to make sure that it's... if you're using one that's battery operated and it's not actually plugged in, you have to make sure that it's charged, and you can just do that by turning the knob in the center on the bottom over to test and watch the arm. It should go all the way over past test. It should go relatively quickly. If it doesn't go all the way to test and doesn't go fast, it's not charged enough to be used. So once we've got our sensitivity knob turned to 32, we're going to turn the knob for the knob in the middle on the bottom, the one, and if you're looking at a photo, it's the one for off, on, and test. We're going to turn it to on. And you're going to see all your numbers are going to change on your dials here, except the clock. So the big knob in the top left corner is the TA, or the tone arm. You're going to set that to be 2. Okay? We've got that to 2. If you change your sensitivity knob, which is the one in the very bottom left corner, it's low, normal, or high. You could, we'll talk about that when I explain actually operating the meter. So for setup, just disregard that. If it's not already on normal, put it on normal. And then, so once you've got it on and everything is set there, you're going to want to go ahead and then use the trim knob and you may have to turn it quite a bit for this to work. You're going to turn your knob until the needle in the center of the meter is adjusted to be in set. which can take a minute. And then there we go. Also, note this. This is important. Like in this case, my meter is sitting right next to my MacBook, and the Wi-Fi signal from my internet to my MacBook is enough of a signal to interfere with the operation of the e-meter. Like if I move this meter and set it on the other side of the laptop to get it away from the box, it's not as bad. But where it is right now, it's close enough to the actual box that it is causing the needle to not be still. So if you encounter that while you're going through this, that's going to be something you'll want to look at first. Radio frequencies absolutely do interfere with the ability of a meter to read reliable data. Excuse me. So once you use the trim knob and you move your needle until you get to the set line, that's when you're going to plug in your actual cord that connects from the meter to the cans. Do not plug them into the cans yet, and make sure that the two ends that go into the cans are not touching each other when you plug the jack into the meter. It is very, very important that you do not let them touch. So, gotta make sure on mine that they are apart from each other. Excellent. Okay, so after we do that, you're gonna plug, and you make sure that they're not touching. Go ahead and plug your jack into the spot. And then plug it in. Okay, so the first thing you'll want to do, especially if you have purchased an older meter or anything like that, once you plug your meter in, you plug this in, and you're going to want to take a look at the ends of your cords to find out if there's any corrosion or anything like that. At the end of the day, the meter is just operating on electricity, and if there's damage to the ends of your cords, it's going to interfere with the ability of the current to run from one can to the other. Same with your cans. If there's corrosion on the cans, or the cans are damaged or anything like that, don't use them. I mean, you can use them for to watch and go along with this, but don't use any pieces of the equipment, whether it's the cord or the cans, if there's even the slightest bit of corrosion, unless you can actually get it off yourself. Once you've got that together, this is one of the first pieces. So on your calibration resistor card, there are two different spots. There's one for 5,000 ohms when the tone arm is at 2.0. So once you've got to this point, you got to have this card to go through the calibration process. You have to take the two ends that you normally plug into the can and plug it into to each side of the 5,000 ohms part of the resistor card. So once you plug them in, and you plug it into the card, you should be able to wiggle the cords around where they're plugged into the card, and the needle should not move at all. If the needle is moving, something is not right when it's plugged into the card. If it doesn't move, you're good to go. Everything's fine. Go ahead and unplug them, and then plug the cords into the cans. At that point, again, make sure that your cans are not touching each other. The first thing is, now you've got there are three different displays on your meter here. Now, the first one is obviously the actual, is just your date and time and everything. You can click buttons to change what data you're having it show you. The next one below that is the tone arm counter. So as you go through an auditing session, you're gonna want to you're gonna have to move the tone arm dial, the one that goes from 1 to 6. And as you do that through your session, you're going to see that that dial is going to change based on the average tone, on the knob throughout your session. There's two different ones. The one and the one next to the clock is the one that shows you your average. Then the third one, the one down in between your sensitivity knob and the actual needle dial, that's going to show you a live reading of what your tone arm is actually set to. And you're going to notice as you go through your session that your second dial down is only going to register changes to the tone arm when you're turning the tone arm down. And that is, you'll understand why that's important once we get to actually operating and using the meter in an auditing session or with drills. But something to keep in mind as you're kind of going through this, if you're turning the arm up and wondering why it is not going up, that's why. It only measures when you're turning it down. And then we've got that plugged in. We've got my tone arm set back to 2. Perfect. So you should be able to see all of that. All of that should work. Finally, you're going to push the meter check button. It's in the bottom left corner right above the one that says low, normal, and high. When you push that button, a blue light is going to turn on. And then just kind of use the tone arm scale when you push that button to turn the meter up and down. You're going to see the needle is going to move very fast. You need to move the needle with the tone arm so that it's so that the needle rests on set. Sorry, give me just a second to get it on there. Perfect. Okay. And then when you actually, when you're doing this, you're going to see, like, if this light is on, if you notice, like when you're turning your tone arm up and down, as you're going through that process, if you notice that the second display down, the one that is measuring as you turn the arm down, if it's not registering anything, go ahead and just hit the meter check button as a test. Your light may be broken, but if that button is pressed, that bar or that doesn't change at all. It won't change no matter what. So just as a potential fix, you might want to try turning that off just in case the meter is working, but the light is dead or not functioning. While you have the meter check button as well, you can also touch your cans together and make sure that the needle does not move. There we go. Got them together. The needle didn't move. Perfect. Once all that's done, push your meter check button again to turn the light off and go back to normal. And then finally, go ahead, you'll put your cans in a position where they're easy for you to hold. If you have the solo auditing thing, you'll want to set them in a position where they're secure and not going to go rolling off the table, or just make sure that they're not touching, basically, is the most important thing. And then you're going to turn your tone arm, the big one, from 1 to 6. You're going to turn it all the way down. So once you turn it all the way down, there are 3 buttons in between the clock and the measurement for the tone arm one, the top 2 ones. There's date, time, and tone arm reset. After you turn your knob all the way down, push the tone arm reset button, and your display there is going to reset again to all zeros. Once that's done, this is the part where it says that you are supposed to make sure that your date and time is all correctly set. That works basically exactly the same way that it does on a car radio, like an original one, with the date and time buttons. So you can set that to make sure that everything is correct. But once you've got this section done, you've got everything ready, your meter check is off, you've gone through all these steps, and your tone arm is turned all the way down, you're ready to use the meter. Everything is done. By default, you're going to want to have your sensitivity meter left at 32. That's going to be where you'll start. You can adjust the sensitivity or use the low, normal, and high knob to the sensitivity booster knob it's called. You can use that to, if the needle is going a little too crazy or it's moving too fast for you to be able to register what is or isn't important. But at this stage, you're ready to go. The meter is ready to be used. While you actually operate the meter, or if you're just using a meter for the very first time and you've got someone with you, just go ahead and try to get... I'm trying to think of a good way to word this so that it's not... What you're going to want to try to do, if you're just using a meter for the first time, I do not recommend trying to use a meter for solo auditing if you don't have somebody to practice with first. The only way to get used to a meter and to get comfortable operating it is to do this process over and over and over and over and get familiar with what is or isn't an important register on the needle, what is or isn't going to be right during the setup process, what is or isn't going to work for people with the sensitivity knobs to make it operate in the way that's easy for you to read as you get more and more comfortable with it. Like, for example, that whole process that we just went through, in the month since I've got this e-meter, I have probably had to go, with the calibration portion, you don't have to do that every single time. I mean, your meters aren't going to corrode and get damaged in the course of a day. So you don't need to do it every single time. But to force myself to get into that habit, to memorize those steps, to go through it exactly the way that it says in the book, to make sure I'm doing it right every time, I have probably literally done that probably 50 plus times. Get yourself familiar with it. Familiarity will progress. You want to build familiarity without losing your observation. To keep yourself focused and understanding everything while you're doing it, but you're almost getting to the point where it's becoming second nature. You're operating on automatic. So once you do that enough, that process gets super easy. Or if you are training on a modern meter, a lot of the steps that we just did, you're not going to have to do anyway. But you can't use a modern meter unless you are in good standing with the IAS, because you need a membership number to be able to connect that machine to a computer and the internet for them to verify that you're not a squirrel. And that pretty much brings it to the end of the whole setup process. If you have, with your meter, if your meter comes with the full set, you'll also have a little bar, a little shield. That's there to separate your notes from the pre-clear. So I don't know if you've ever been into a counseling session, but I have been. Back in the day, I had many different counselors, and it would always bother me to be in the back of my mind to try and look at what they were writing. That's what that's for, to kind of keep everything calm. You can explain to a pre-clear that, at least I try to, that what we're writing down isn't, if somebody's going through something really difficult or a real problem or for something that happened to them in their life, I'm not going to be writing down all of the dirty details or anything like that, because that's not what we're looking for. Reducing charge only involves using certain techniques, like the repeater technique, to go through an engram. You don't need to, if somebody's been, let's say they've been hurt by somebody else, you don't need to write down who it was or anything like that. If the person in an engram says the name, and the name seems to hold charge, whether you're doing Dianetic auditing or metered auditing, then you would want to write the name down. just so that you can say, recall a time with this person, or to recall the earliest time of an earliest time of discomfort with such and such person. But that's the nature of it when we're trying to find different key-ins to be able to help somebody work through whatever it is you're trying to work through with them. But it's not, we're not there to be writing down secrets or anything like that. It's just important things to try and work you back on the chain. Just keep, because the goal of all auditing, at least in my opinion, the primary goal of all auditing, regardless of the rest of the bridge, is basic. You cannot go clear until the basic Ingram has been reduced of charge and that chain broken and removed from the Ingram bank, which is a lot of were a lot of Scientology words all squished into one right there. But I'll probably talk about that in more detail in a bit in an episode devoted to Dianetics. But as you've probably noticed through other episodes, I have a difficult time sometimes talking about the materials, not because I don't want to. Obviously I love talking about it and explaining it, and I'm comfortable with my beliefs and what I understand to be true, and so that's why it's easy for me to discuss or talk about things with people, because I'm not threatened by the questions that they ask. And so it's not that prevents me from wanting to go into detail or talking about certain things like this. It's just that the primary goal is the information in Dianetics should be something that you read for yourself. If you're interested in it, Dianetics is a long book, and there are parts of it that are an arduous read, but, I go back and forth on this because I feel like there are things I can talk about that aren't open to interpretation, so I'm not breaking the something's only true if it's true for you rule, but at the same time, I'm also on the other end where you can read Dianetics for yourself, and you can email me or message me questions, which is a commitment that somewhat of a serious commitment that I've noticed with some folks out there who have sent me some messages. Also, this is something too that I wanted to just throw out there while we're on this topic. If you're reading materials about Dianetics, there is a reason that there is the materials guide chart, and a reason that you are supposed to start at the beginning, because I am not going to name names, and I'm not angry or frustrated by this. It's just I have to keep repeating this to more than one person. I get consistent questions from some people who I have started to go back and forth on, and somebody who has wound up actually paying me to be their case supervisor. And this person is working their way through Dianetics, but they're also going on the internet or communicating through independent Scientology channels and groups and things like that. And they're receiving other Scientology materials that they are reading and asking me about. And if you're an independent Scientologist, you're obviously free to do whatever you want, but I cannot beg you enough that if somebody is being introduced to our religion, please make them read the Fundamentals of Thought and Dianetics, or one or the other, before you let them get anything else from you. Because they're asking me these people, at least I'm talking about two people in particular. These two individuals are all very active in some independent groups on Facebook, and because of that and their communication with other members in those groups, while I am trying to get them to read Dianetics, which is called Book 1 for a reason, they're also being given information like the Scientology Technical Dictionary, they're doing Dianetics. They don't need to be using the Scientology technical dictionary is not something that they need yet. But because they have it and they're now reading it, they're asking me questions or having me look at like there's a diagram of the mind which kind of gives you an illustration of the way that Dianetics works, and that's great. But they're asking me about it and asking me to explain it to them. When they need to, if they read Dianetics, they would understand it. So it's, and there are other examples of this, especially with exteriorization and theta. You can't see me, but I have to put my hands on my temples in this case because the questions that people give me about theta in particular, so that, I don't want to say it drives me crazy, but it can be so frustrating that I get quite a few messages. I'm very active, very friendly. I don't judge anybody, and I'm very adherent to the rules, and people like consistency. I think, but oh my lord, I think it's because Thetan is such a well-known word in Scientology, or maybe it's the materials that people are more commonly given by independent Scientologists, or that they're easily available for them to find on Google. But I cannot tell you enough how many times I have had to say to, and this is more than just the two people I was talking about before, they will ask me questions about theta, and I tell them, don't worry about theta until you finish Dianetics. And they'll say, well, why? And I'll say, because theta is something that you will learn about when you get to the book 880. And so they'll say, well, why? Can you please just answer the question? And I'll say to them, what is the eighth dynamic in Scientology? And they'll say, and some people can give me the correct answer. Some people are not able to give me the correct answer. And I'll say, how confident do you feel about your ability to understand and have worked on your dynamics 1 through 4? And that's a question that always throws people, because when I ask them that, because they'll say, some people will say, well, I'm working on it, or some will say they don't even know what I mean by that. And then I'll say, well, what about dynamics 5 through 7? Can you name those for me? And I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm saying that because the 8 and 880 is referring to the 8th dynamic. And you don't need to even focus on that or deal with that until you start with Dianetics. There's no point in worrying about your ability to create theta and life energy until you can get your reactive mind under control. And at that point, when you're jumping around from book to book and ignoring the materials guide chart, every independent Scientologist who listens to this show or anything like that should know this. You are introducing unstable data and creating confusion because you are not letting them follow a grade of learning that works for them. So that is why, if you listen to my show, I understand that you're listening to me because we communicate and we get along well, and you maybe agree or you're curious to what I have to say. I don't put this out in the independent Scientology groups that I'm not a part of, but I cannot tell you enough how much I personally think that if somebody asks you for Scientology materials and you're an independent Scientologist and you give them when you add, the first thing you should ask them is, have you read Dianetics? And if they say no, the first thing should be, I will not give you materials until you read Dianetics. Flat out. Because you get to all these other pieces where there are these things that they start to read, words that they don't understand or concepts that they don't understand, because they're starting at a book that isn't meant to be a starting point. And that's not to say that it should be a secret or anything. I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I mean by that, to think that I'm saying, we should withhold that information. But this is the line that I've started to take with the people who ask me questions. If I go through my messages right now, the number of times that I have told multiple people in here, like in this case, a person asked me a question and I had to say that you'll have to get your answer from word clearing, or they'll say that let me find it here because I want to give you the number of times for different people here. So here's an example. It's impossible for me to explain that or explain it in more details, as that is what the whole book of Dianetics is about. And then you'll have examples here. They ask me a question because this is the example I was giving about the technical dictionary. They asked me a question and I said, that is not correct. You'll want to keep reading Dianetics. There are chapters on both the reactive and analytical mind. And then by another example from another person, Scientology as a religion doesn't deal with the analytical mind at all. That's Dianetics. By reading that book, you will understand absolutely everything about how the mind works. The mind does not automatically analyze data. It is always recording and storing data, but not automatically analyzing it. And so these are examples. That's just examples from 3 different people. And those 3 examples are just since June 18th. In the last 8 days, those are 3 times that I've had to tell people to read Dianetics before they ask me about other materials, because they're asking me questions that they would know the answer to if they followed the guide to the materials chart. There are no shortcuts in Scientology. You have to, like I said, and like we talked about in learning how to learn, a person has to learn at a gradient that will allow the information to make sense to them. And so this is my plea to all of the independent Scientologists who listen to me. Please stop giving materials from different parts of the materials guide to people if they don't have the basics to begin with. They make them follow the gradient. That's one of the parts of a code to a Scientologist, is that we're supposed to introduce and educate people on Scientology in a way or a level that they will be able to understand. And people cannot understand pieces from the materials guide chart past what they have not read yet. Like, you can't read 88008 without reading 880. You can't read the creation of human ability without reading 88008. You can't, and you can't read either of them or any of the 3 of them without learning Dianetics. So, as a collective religion, it would certainly make my life a lot easier in that case, because, and this may be why, like I've said before, and I don't disparage people, everybody in the independent Scientology community is free to do what they want with the people that are in their charge. But I strictly follow the rule that something is only true if it's true for you. So other people may be comfortable just straight up answering these questions for people, but I am not. If you ask me questions, I can tell you how to find the answers or the materials that you need, but I'm not going to give you a direct answer unless it's part of materials that you have already read and understood. You can't just ask me to explain how the Ingram Bank or the data or the file clerk works if you've never read Dianetics. If you read Dianetics and you were at that part and you didn't understand the context, then I would be more than able to help you get through it, but I'm not just going to give you an answer when it comes to the study of the materials. I do not do that. And I hope that people are the better for it, because I know, like I said, that the Dianetics is a long book, but you have to do it yourself. If you can't do it that way, you can watch the video, you can use the audiobook. The audiobook is available on Amazon, on Audible if you have an Audible subscription, but you have to do it yourself. And then if you encounter confusion in materials you are studying at the correct level for you, I'm more than happy to help you word clear or point out where to find the answer or help you find a definition or anything like that, but I won't give you the answer. And then that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode here. A couple of things. Part of the reason that the schedule has been so odd is if you go to our website, Scientologychat.podbean.com, you'll see that the website has been redone. I redid it to make it look nicer. I fixed some of the buttons. I added a button to be able to make it easier to get to the Dianetics Amazon page, because I was sending that to people to make it easier for them to find whether they wanted the audiobook or a new copy or a pre-owned copy. Now you can just click the Get Materials button on our website, on that website, and it'll just take you straight to it in the app or on the website to make that easier. We also I got a wonderful person who sent us $100, which I greatly appreciate. And that money was to go towards the redoing our Podbean subscription. Redo it like I talked about in the other episode. I've been working to redo a lot of the technical parts of the podcast to get ready for when we start doing video as well as audio. And so this person gave a donation and has been very, very helpful in getting all of that together. And as a part of that, if anybody out there, I'm never gonna ask you to just straight up give money for no reason. You can now click the support our show button from the Scientology website, the Scientologychat.podbean.com, and it will let you donate to us. The project that I'm working on, that many of you know about, with being able to do self-analysis and provide services to the jails, that is what those donations will go to support. The biggest thing, and I'll talk about this more if you're not interested in this is no longer explicitly about Scientology, but I've been working on putting together a website to get this off the ground here in Utah, because America doesn't offer prisoners a lot of great pieces about getting ready to go back into the working world after you get out of prison. In the first place, but in jail, it's even worse. Most of you know I've been serving weekends in jail for whatever. If you go back and look and see the episode why we were gone, you can listen to that whole spiel. But in the process that I've been doing these weekends, I have already seen multiple people get out and come back in again. And there's a gentleman who I met named Robert who was in jail because he was homeless. Like, he wanted to stay in jail. He was refusing to take a plea deal and wanted to go to trial so he could stay in the jail. He has been released and is now back in jail again, and he did it deliberately. So what I've been to get back into jail for 3 hots and a cot and all that. So the first thing that we're going to try, I'm working on to put together here, it will be, I'm doing it because I don't even know. I guess I'm doing it because I want to make the world a better place, and I want to also help people get better mental health wise, and to be raised higher on the tone scale. I don't know if I can attribute all of that to Scientologist, or if that's just who I am as a person, or if one thing led to the other and in which direction, I cannot say. But I've been putting together a website and reaching out to different employers around the county and around the area I'd like to put together a more reliable resource than the Department of Health and Human Services, or Department of Workforce Services is what it's called in Utah, where I would be able to provide people job listings and have more rapport. Where if I, like some of the people who are in there for months and months and months, there might be people who would, if they're taking their mental health seriously and I see genuine effort and I believe that they're going to make an effort and they want to get better, because there are many people in there who don't. That's just, it's sad, but it's true. There are plenty of people in jail who don't give a shit, and they can't wait to get out so that they can get back to doing whatever. But for those who do, and those who want to have a chance, or those who have had court or whatever happen to them, ruin their lives, or drinking or whatever, if they wanted to go through a program together, which would be self-analysis, irreligious, don't care if they convert, don't care what they think about Scientology, if it helps them even a little bit, and I see genuine effort to make a difference, or genuine effort to change and get better, then that would be great. I would be more than happy to write a letter of support to these employers who would be willing to give them a job, and we can try to help them, not just let them back out and be back in the same boat, but to actually build a bridge for them to get from where they are to where they should be. And so that's the first goal. Is I've been working with some employers, some big employers around here, to see if they would be able to send me an email, possibly even send me an email first when positions open up. And I'm going to put them together into a website and kind of wrap it all together so that these people, when I'm working through the jail and the self-analysis program, will be able to very easily go to this, or I could even help them do it while they're still in jail, while they're to get their application, get their information, get their release date, and kind of help them have structure when they get out, so it's not just throwing them to the wolves. So that's what you would be donating for. That's kind of, it's taking a lot of my time to be able to put this together, what little free time I have now that I'm sans my own weekends. But if you can support that, that would be great. There's different rewards, different things that I'm gonna do to, if people wind up supporting the show, to show my thanks and gratitude for that. But you won't be giving me money to give to the IAS, or giving me money to pay for courses, or giving me money to pay to go, do whatever. All of the money will be going towards that, and I'm really excited to show you the website once it's all put together. This whole thing has been my goal since I was in the Church of Scientology, and it was my commitment to it was what got me kicked out of it, basically. And the obstacles may be plentiful, but the reward, if it helps even one person, will be worth it. And so that's what I'm going to do, and I hope if any of you would like to support us, doesn't matter where you are in the world, anybody will be able to participate in this if you'd like to. That's what we're going to do, and I can't wait to share with you as that process continues. But thank you so much. I hope this slightly longer episode kind of compensates for the short one that we did before. Still planning on doing another episode tomorrow as of right now. Another episode probably next Wednesday instead of the normal Thursday. I will continue this series about the e-meters. This episode is just going to be about how to set up the e-meter, but we will talk about using it, e-meter drills, different aspects of it. And so I think next Wednesday, or possibly the Wednesday afterwards, depending on scheduling, the Thursday episodes will be consistent, God willing. But these episodes take way more time, are going to take way more time for me to put together, to get the materials, to write everything down so I don't forget it, and then give you wrong information, and to, have the meter and blah, blah, blah. So I will keep going on this topic to help you. If you have any specific questions about it that you'd like me to cover, send me an email, Scientologychat, all one word, at gmail.com. The website, again, if you're listening on another service, is scientologychat.podbean, Podbean, podbean.com. Scientologychat.podbean.com. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you all out there. Have a good rest of your day, and you will hear from us again tomorrow.